Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today I'm coming to you with a video about the top 5 lessons I have learned from YA literature. This video is being sponsored by HarperCollins, so thank you so much to them for sponsoring this video, and that is to celebrate the release of Invisible Ghosts by Robin Schneider. This book was just released on June 5th, so it is out now if you'd like to go and get yourself a copy. This book follows the story of this girl named Rose whose brother passed away, and ever since he died, his ghost has stuck with her. He died when he was 15 years old, and ever since then, his ghost has just been with Rose this entire time. She talks to him, he's her best friend, and she's content in all of this until one day a boy from her past moves back into town, and then it causes some drama. The story truly revolves around Rose as she's trying to cope with the grief and loss of her brother, and I think it's going to be a fantastic story. It sounds like just the type of thing that I would like to read. It sounds like obviously a very emotional, very deep and heartwarming book, something that you can really sink your teeth into, which is the type of story I really appreciate. So I have very high hopes, and I'm hoping that they're met. But because the story focuses on Rose learning how to deal with the loss of her brother and learning how to deal with this grief, I decided today that I'm gonna make a list of lessons, like life lessons that I have learned from YA literature. Obviously, all of the books that we read inevitably teach us some sort of lesson in one way or another because of the time that we read them or the story itself, but I feel like YA as a category has its own unique lessons that it can teach us as well, so that's why I wanted to put this list together. I made a video similar in style to this one last year about the 20 lessons I learned from Harry Potter over 20 years for the 20th anniversary of that, and I kind of just like listed out some of the lessons that I learned from it, and that's kind of how I'm gonna go with this video as well. Like I mentioned, I have a list of 5 different lessons I've learned from YA, of different things that I have learned over the years and different things that I think that YA has to teach us all. So without any further ado, I'm just gonna jump into it. Change is an inevitable part of growth. A good majority of YA focuses on coming-of-age stories, or stories about characters finding themselves. Obviously that makes a lot of sense because of the age range that YA is usually written about. Your teen years into your early adulthood is a time of figuring out what you want to do with your life, figuring out who you are, and it's a lot of like emotional turmoil. But essentially these stories focus on characters in their youth facing obstacles and eventually overcoming them and learning from them. Therefore, I think one of the most important things YA has to teach us, and one of the biggest lessons I've taken from it, is that while change can be extremely difficult and just horrifying, it is truly essential to developing who you are as a person. And I think we have stories like Harry Potter and the Raven Boys to thank for that. Facing demons, whether internal or external, is far less challenging with the help of your friends. Strong friendships are a significant part of a lot of YA stories, especially a lot of my favorite ones. And while I've always been lucky to be surrounded by such incredibly amazing and supportive friends, I think one of the biggest things that YA has taught me is to never take those friends for granted and to lean on them when it's necessary, because that's more often than not. Sometimes I feel like we can get so into our own heads and feel like we have to do things for ourselves and that we don't have any support, but I think it's important to remember that your friends are there for you and they care about you and they want to help and support you, and it's a lot easier to get through everything that you're facing when you let them in. A few books that I think predominantly feature the importance of friendships are definitely Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and The Diviners by Libba Bray. All of these books place a very high value on the importance of friendship and how much that friendship can help and support you through whatever you're struggling through, so that's why these are some of my favorites. Now, a little bit on the opposite side of the last lesson, I think one of the most important things that YA has to teach us is that you are the hero of your own story. Sometimes it can seem like all the odds are stacked against you, and I think that a lot of YA protagonists experience this feeling. But I think one main thing that I've really learned from reading so much YA is that sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. When no one else is willing to fight for you, when no one else is there for you, you have the ability to take that charge and to do what needs to be done for yourself. Whether you're fighting in a fantasy world or you're just living your everyday life, you have the ability to fight for you. And that's something that's really hard to learn, especially when you're younger, especially when you're just trying to figure out who you are. And I think YA has a profound ability to be able to teach us that we can fight for ourselves, even when we think we can't. Of course, a few books that come to mind for me that definitely, I think, portray this lesson very well are An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. All 3 of these books are exceptional, and they have all taught me how important it is to fight for myself and that I can fight for myself even when I don't think I can. Sometimes you just have to let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. I'm sorry, I had to include that in here. It's true though, I feel like a lot of people, even myself included, have kind of thought of this trope of YA to be unnecessary and weird and like unsensical, but if you think about it, sometimes I am holding a breath that I didn't know I was holding and then I just have to let it out, and that happens, and YA made me way more aware of that, so that's a lesson I've learned. But lastly, again, on a serious note, I think one of the most incredible things YA has to teach us, and one of the main things that I've learned, is that you belong wherever you choose to be. YA was the first place I ever saw myself represented in literature. Prior to when I started reading YA, I had only ever read like classics that had been assigned to me in class. I started reading YA when I think I was 11 years old, and I had first gotten into the Twilight Saga actually. And while yes, Bella Swan and I are very different people, and I could not necessarily relate to her in every way considering she was like 16 or 17 and I was only 11, there were a lot more things I could relate to in her story than there were in other classics that I had to read that didn't pertain to my life at all. I'm not saying this as in the only books that are worth reading are the ones that you can personally relate to. It was just the first place that I ever saw that happen for me, and I think that that's an important part of reading. But since I was 11 and first started reading in this category, I have seen YA expand immensely, and it's become so much more diverse, and there are so many more stories now, and so many stories that I have read that I have related to on such a deep, personal, emotional level in places that I never thought I would see myself. What I think is so amazing is that you can pick up a YA fantasy or contemporary and you can see a version of yourself there, which I just think is so incredible. You can be a warrior slaying demons in one story, and you can be a girl who's just lost her brother and is struggling with grief in another. While I do think that we still have a ways to go in terms of diversity and representation and which stories are promoted and hyped up and which ones become popular, I do think that YA is headed in that direction, and I do think that what we have now is still incredible. While I've yet to find a story where I fully see myself and all of my identities represented, I still have found different stories where I see parts of myself, and I grasp onto those parts and I treasure them and cherish them because they mean so much to me. For me, two books that immediately come to mind absolutely have to be Turtles All the Way Down by John Green and also Love and Other Carnivorous Plants by Florence Gonzalez. These are two books that I read and I saw so much of myself in both of them, and it was a beautiful reading experience getting to see that, getting to see part of my identity that I didn't get to see when I was younger represented in a book. And while I would have loved to have these while I was growing up, they've also come to me at exactly the right time in my life, and there's nothing that beats that feeling. So I absolutely think that one of the main things we can take away from YA literature is that we belong in all of these stories and we should be able to see ourselves in all of these stories. And I absolutely think that YA is trying to do that and succeeding at it slowly but surely. So yeah, there you all have it. That is my list of 5 life lessons I've learned from YA, or that you can learn from YA. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you agreed with any of these lessons. Do you think that there are any other important lessons that you've learned from YA that you think are significant to mention? Because there are definitely more than this. I just wanted to make this like a short and sweet list of like, I think the most important things that I've taken from reading YA so much. Clearly, I love YA, so I'm always so happy to talk about it, but I want to hear from you guys and what you guys think are some of the most important things that you've learned from YA. Once again, a huge thank you to HarperCollins for sponsoring this video, and don't forget to go and check out Invisible Ghosts by Robin Schneider. There will be links in the description box if you'd like to know more about Invisible Ghosts or if you'd like to get yourself a copy. But there you all have it. That is it for this video. If you'd like to follow me on any of my social media, all of my links are in the description box as always. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!